I think the big lessons are two. One is how to find data that reflects the real world, as opposed to data that we think reflects the real world, or as opposed to acting on our opinion or hunch or ideology or whatever. And a lot of that in financial planning and investing generally is sometimes you have to work hard to find data that goes against your what are called priors or your biases. So you may think that you know a strategy, you may know a timetable, whatever, but it's really important and sometimes difficult to seek out data that reflects the reality that might lead you to change your mind. I mean, I think one of the greatest and most difficult characteristics of a human mind, of a good human mind, is the ability to, when confronted with facts that run counter to your beliefs, to actually change your mind. And so seek out data that lets you do that. And two is understand the incentives that make people behave as they do. And that sounds on the surface somewhere between kind of mushy and obvious. You know, of course people respond to incentives, but the key is that the incentives that make people respond are sometimes different than the ones that we think would make them respond. Partly that's a function of, if we're asked something in a public setting, you know, if I were to ask you, do you consider yourself a charitable, altruistic person? You know, very few people are going to say no, but then if I see what you actually spend on charity, that might not be the case. So one is the circumstances under which the question is asked, but also often the incentives that are created by smart, motivated, professional people may work for them or for people like them, but don't necessarily work for the people that they're trying to create them for. So a lot of times people create incentives that get responded to very differently than planned. And that's where you have to really try to, again, work hard to get data to understand the incentives that make people really make decisions the way they do. We kind of know there are no magic bullets in life generally, but there are a few that come close if you look through history. So basically, the more education that people get generally, the richer, happier, and healthier they're going to be. So that's a huge input into a life which has a lot of outputs. And it's really good to remember because it's easy to get swept up in the anomalies. You know, Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg are two of the richest, most prominent business people in the last 50 years, and they both dropped out of college. So it's very easy to say, well, you know, college really doesn't matter. And for some people, it actually may not matter. And there may be a lot of people for whom college is not really that appropriate. But the fact is that the more education you get, the more return you get on that. So for anybody in any kind of professional setting, whether it's me as a writer, whether it's financial analysts, financial planners, investment analysts, whatever, education is key because data is key. And what education teaches you to do is seek out and find good data.